Most developers look for a sure thing. David Fharr and Jason Watkins looked at a derelict theater that had defeated every previous revival attempt and decided that was their end. Hey, it's Paul Wolf with a front row seat to conversations on culture from Jackson, Mississippi. We call our podcast Soul Sessions. It's the people, places, and events that make the city with soul shine. On today's show, these two developers talk about what it actually takes to bet on a neighborhood and why, for two people who aren't planning to go anywhere, that bet only keeps getting bigger. So I want to start off talking about a project that everyone at this point knows about or should know about in Fondren, the neighborhood that you both have put so much time and effort and energy and resource into. The Capri Theater. That theater was built back in the 30s, part of the Fondren Strip there on the west side of State Street, and multiple revival attempts of that theater before you all got involved. So what made you think that this time could be different?
Well, that's a great question, and really some further background on it. When the group I was with bought the original property on the Strip, we bought everything but the Capri because somebody else owned that. And honestly, we were somewhat relieved that we didn't have the Capri because it was so daunting. And we're like, well, that's somebody else's problem. We'll just do it. We'll just do what we have. And then as fate had it, that person who owned that decided he wanted to sell. And so we bit the bullet, and then somewhat on a wing and a prayer bought it. And then I don't know, we probably just were young and we had a lot of ambition at the time. So that's what made us think that we could do something.
And it really starts with, of course, when I joined the group, it was to get involved directly in adaptive reuse in the core and participate directly in the kind of community work that I'd gotten so caught up in trying to improve Jackson. The next decision I made was a little more dramatic when it came time to kind of pivot my law practice, left the big firm and decided to see if there was a way to re-civilize a portion of that giant barn that had been sitting empty for 36 years with a hole in the roof and put a law office in it, which really became kind of a combination law and development office. But, it sort of ushered in this period of blue sky thinking about what could happen there because people stopped by. People from, 3 generations of experience with the building and the neighborhood came by to share memories and opinions about what could happen there. It was just incredible. Actually bringing back movie exhibition was not necessarily at the top of our list to begin with. And it was kind of a winding road how we got there. But the core, I guess, rationale for why we thought it could work was that we had access to adjacent buildings, property to expand the operation to include a kitchen and offer the kind of experiential movie product that was actually growing, where the kind of traditional multiplex model was shrinking at the time. But this segment of the movie theater business that offered dine-in service was really growing at a rapid pace. Of course, this was all before COVID, so things changed in the process before we got open. And then Jason and I, what we started out bringing to development work was kind of an understanding of incentives that are available for this kind of development. And the scope of the Capri offered a great deal of historic tax credits to help with the capital stack, to get the project off the ground. So that was another big advantage.
Yeah, we should mention, too, that in case anyone doesn't realize that the Capri is part of a broader complex called The Block, which has Highball Lanes, which is a bowling alley with a restaurant. There's a tiki bar there. There's Fondren Yard, which is a big outdoor space, Jumbotron, concessions, and more. And then, of course, you have the station, which has wood-fired pizzas. And just recently announced that Joe Cravens from Walker's would be taking over food operations there.
Yeah, we couldn't be more excited about this recent change. I mean, this concept that we did, and it really dovetails with your other question about the Capri, is that it was really designed to fill what we thought was a void in the for the Jackson social and entertainment and cultural scene of having a central gathering place for if you have somebody coming to town, where do you go? Obviously, we have museums and things like that, but like, where's the nightlife? What's the spot that you can be proud of? And we just felt like there was no place like that in Jackson, and we thought Fondren was sort of that place ish because it had good restaurants. But if you could be the destination place within that ish place, then that was sort of the goal there. So then we created this sort of large scale entertainment situation, but we tried to keep it very true to the neighborhood, kept the building facades, and didn't do some monolithic Bolarama type name across it. We wanted it to feel like it was part of the fabric. But we also felt like it was very important to have an authentic kind of a chef driven experience. And we think we're finally hitting the stride with that sort of local chef operator who is he's so attuned to what's going on in the neighborhood and has a real energy and talent. I think we're gonna see some amazing things out of him.
You both live here in Jackson. You're not just some outside investors just parachuting in to try to save the day. So how much of that does that shape the risks that you're willing to actually take?
For me, it just removes the entire governor off of the risk. I've really, kind of put it all out there for the neighborhood, for better or for worse. So as Fondren goes, I go. As Fondren dies, I will probably die.
Yeah, when you're not planning to go anywhere, all the decisions you make just get more intense.
It's your backyard, right?
Yep. Yeah. And like I said before, I really was motivated to get into this work because of my love for Jackson. I mean, that is the driving interest.
We mentioned tax credits earlier, and I know that you all paid for the application and the work required to get the downtown Fondren Historic Business District on the National Register of Historic Places. What was the thinking behind that?
Part of what went in this process was really driven by our reevaluation of what we should do on the Strip altogether. So we considered early on when we first acquired it whether we should demo some buildings and try to expand and give some more of a vertical feel. And we from feedback from the neighborhood, we just didn't feel like that was right. And as we reevaluated, we ultimately decided to lean into the existing architecture and feel. And so that made it pretty simple. That needed to be continued and replicated throughout the neighborhood. And so with encouragement from Archives and History to sort of be the sponsor for this, we were convinced that would enable further projects by having it as an historic district, which enabled historic tax credits and other benefits, that it would not only help our project as we're trying to kind of get off the ground, but other projects that sort of buttress what we were doing. It just made a lot of sense for our own selfish reasons, but also just for neighborhood purposes.
The theater is unique in that it's also a landmark, a state designated landmark. But in order to get the full benefit of the incentives, it needed to be a landmark inside a historic district. So that was the idea behind it.
And has that designation in the National Register helped to shape what the neighborhood is going to look like and feel like for the future?
Absolutely. I mean, the designation does not restrict people from doing something to their building. So if you wanted to tear a building down and put something, you can. It's not like this, like a true historic district like Belhaven has, for example. But if you want to use tax credits, historic tax credits to improve your project, then this makes all the difference in the world. And we can talk about this more later, but we didn't intend to do this, but there's a future project that David and I are working on that will be pretty impactful that would not be possible without this. There are other buildings that I don't know if anybody else has done what we've done so far in terms of use credits to improve, but there are several properties that you can see will ultimately benefit from it, whether it's a grocery store or a strip mall or what have you.
The 500 space parking garage that is right behind the Fondren strip there in the block in your developments, that was a Hinds County project, but you all helped pull that together. So, what does that say for the benefit of a public private partnership where things are actually aligned for the benefit of everyone involved?
Yeah, we're super proud and excited that that came together, and I think it really is I think one of the hallmarks of improving alignment between city, county, and state, and trying to reverse some of these population trends. And we were just kind of fortunate that we came to it after years of discussion about the need for improved parking in Fondren. And there were differences of opinion about where it could be located, but we ended up with the perfect spot because it sits kind of lower from the elevation on State Street, and it just more or less disappears. It does stick up a little higher than we thought it would in concept, but it really is a perfect location. We discovered over time that had been a fairly popular centralized spot for parking at peak times in the neighborhood over the decades because the theater needed a lot of parking. And so when it wasn't full of moviegoers, that's kind of where you would park. There was an alleyway in the middle of the strip that kind of gave easy access from back there. That's since been closed because one of the buildings expanded into it. But it really has been a great project. We're just grateful that the elected officials saw the benefit and, investing that way. We didn't create the model, the statute that was used for it, but we're happy that everybody saw the benefit of using it there.
I mean, what was interesting is that you sort of are beaten down into a philosophy of, well, if you're in Jackson, you don't even need to bother asking for the state for any help. And that was just simply not the case, as we learned that the state was willing to help. They just wanted to see a tangible project that could come of it that they could trust. And we created a pretty unique partnership between MDA and the Hinds County Board of Supervisors, and then of course the private development. And we're able to build it, successfully, and now it's generating revenue and is going to facilitate more development.
David, you've been on the board for the Community Foundation for Mississippi and involved in broader civic work. So, how does that perspective actually shape the way you approach a project like this? Is it different from a developer who's purely focused on getting a return on their investment?
Well, I find the motivations in both contexts to be very harmonious. And maybe that's because I come to, this work with a community focus. Maybe it's just the nature of where Jackson is in this moment, but all of these stakeholders are really working toward the same goal of taking what we have, improving quality of life for existing citizens, and making the city more attractive for people to move here. I think that's kind of widely acknowledged to be our biggest challenge in Jackson right now. Kind of we've made good progress on our infrastructure crisis, but everybody agrees we need more people. We went through too many years of losing people, and we've got to get more people here. The Community Foundation was extremely rewarding. That there is, not another group that I can think of that kind of ties philanthropic capital together with smart planning and with a priority to come alongside our elected leadership to do things that are universally accepted as positive for all. There are other groups kind of working in different niches, including one that is on the horizon for Fondren that's going to focus on blight. People assume that Fondren is great, doesn't need any help, and there are certainly areas of the neighborhood that are very successful, and we've seen some progress in the commercial district. West Fondren has got a serious blight issue that it's fighting. It's time to get more aggressive about that in the neighborhood, and I'm excited that that that's starting to happen. Neighborhood-wide strategic planning process that work that was done by Fondren Renaissance called Fondren Forward is going to be bearing fruits for a long time.
You mentioned the need to bring more people back to Jackson, more residents. And so one of the newest projects that's right there at your back door at the block is the flats at Fondren from Arlington Properties. The two of you spent years quietly assembling the parcels that they needed to build these residential units. How do you hold a vision like that together across that kind of timeline?
Pure stubbornness is the best explanation for that. We felt very strongly, and as David just articulated well, that Fondren needs to expand. First of all, it needs better housing stock, it needs more residents, and it needs to also expand beyond the areas that have just been served by sort of the Fondren's Renaissance. So this starts to edge it a little bit, and this is just west of State Street. So it starts to edge a little bit further west and get it to the area that hasn't enjoyed it. And it's not gentrification; it's just bringing some much needed resource to an area that's underserved, and hopefully that can spread out. I think there are 10 properties that were sort of repurposed for this, some of which one had turned into a squatter's home. There was, maybe a handful of people who lived in the others. And, that's going to be 234 units now of Class A plus housing stock. This is going to be a 50-year plus development. It's going to leave a really nice impression on the area, and going to bring a lot of professionals who otherwise can't be in the area, and also people who just want to elevate where they're living, who are already in the area, to have a nice place to live.
I've heard there's something else in the works and that maybe you can't talk about it yet, but is there anything that you can tease out about future projects that the two of you have on the plate?
Yes, we do have another, what we consider to be a large project, and I think it is large by Fondren standards. We can't identify where, but we can identify that it'll be substantial, should bring a lot more residents, or a lot more people, I should say, to the neighborhood, to the downtown Fondren area. And it's going to be a 27 project. I'm not sure how much more I can say other than that construction on it, we believe, will start by no later than beginning of 27 and should be complete by the end of 27.
It is exciting that it's coming together as well as it is, because the fourth quarter of 27 is also when we're expecting to see the new hotel and the new apartments open. So it's like becoming a real peak moment for the neighborhood.
Components of what this project will be are going to, we hope, foster Fondren as a more of a destination for festivals and conferences and events that couldn't otherwise be in Jackson because there aren't enough resources right now to accommodate people. And this would help fit that bill when it complements the other things, when you've got breakout space at Dueling, you've got a theater space that can be used for presentations at the Capri, and now hotel spaces and all kinds of fun dining options. So you really are able to land not the huge conventions, but the festivals, the food and wine events,
a miniature South by Southwest, live music, movies, speaker content, people walking around with, hang tags. When I was on the FRF board, I spent a lot of time, pushing for creation of the Business Improvement District and trying to figure that out. What's the future of the neighborhood festival here? We were kind of going through a lot of changes with the things that are regularly on the calendar. And the missing piece was the ability for people to stay in the neighborhood. And when I said before the hotel and apartments, I was referring to the Hampton Inn, which is adjacent to the station. And that's a wealth hospitality project, Chico Patel, 110 rooms, and it's expected to be open by the end of next year, as well as the apartments.
Well, this ties perfectly into my last question, and that is, what does Fondren look like in your mind 5 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at a place that's got the downtown Fondren, particularly, double, triple the density of the population. No more sleepy Sundays or Mondays. You got people walking around to the restaurants. You've got more of the 24/7 feel. Maybe not 24, but you definitely have more of the vibrancy that you see it. Well, what I say often is you see it in pockets. Times you really get that. Oh my gosh, like this is such a cool neighborhood. There's so much vibrancy, but that's not all the time. And I think you're going to start seeing it all the time. That you're going to have just people on every corner walking around doing commerce things.
I think you'll see noticeable improvement in the areas that are still showing some blight and concern. And with any luck, there'll be a clear path for resolving the Eubanks Creek issues that the larger neighborhood is having, and better connectivity for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. I think we have some real gems in the bordering the residential areas, all the way down Old Canton, North State, and now Meadowbrook. I work on the Museum Trail project as well, and I'd love to see Fondren get better connected to the citywide network and grow that network across the city, obviously. But I think in 5 years, we'll understand what that looks like a lot better than we do now.
That's David Pharr and Jason Watkins, whose story is about what the long game looks like when it's played by people with real skin in the game. From a reluctant decision to take on a theater nobody else could save, to years of quietly assembling land parcels for 234 new apartments, to a future project they can't really talk about yet, every move has been a deeper bet on the same neighborhood. David described the vision as something like a miniature South by Southwest. Live music, movies, festivals, and foot traffic, not as a pocket moment on a Friday, but as an everyday texture of Fondren. If you've spent any time in the neighborhood lately, you know they're not as far off as it might sound. We'll have links in our show notes to the block at Fondren and everything else David and Jason are building at visitjackson.com/soul sessions. This podcast is produced by Visit Jackson, the destination organization for Mississippi's capital city. Our executive producers are Jonathan Pettis and Dr. Ricky Thigpen, and I'm our managing editor. There's always something great going on in Jackson, and we keep up with it at visitjackson.com. I'm Paul Wolf, and you've been listening to Soul Sessions. I'm Paul Wolf, and you've been listening to Soul Sessions.